there's drama between Microsoft and OpenAI.
This could be a very, very juicy fight.
We are going to get a one-person unicorn one day.
Would you rather work for a tobacco company or Meta?
I just want to see a scene with Andrew Garfield in Singapore just sipping Mai Tai, just like,
Yeah,
not involved. Yo, everyone, welcome back. Brand new Techish. It is me, Michael Bahane, the CEO of Pocket and Pocket Jobs, and I am joined with
Abadesi, CEO of Hustle Crew. Let's go.
Ooh, so let's go. First story I want to talk about is something that I think is going to represent a shift in entrepreneurship, which is what both me and you are. So this is relevant, and a lot of you are founders too. So Wix just acquired a 6-month-old AI startup called Base 44 for $80 million in cash. Now, why this is amazing
is 6 months old, 80 million.
Exactly.
Damn.
Yeah. And essentially, the company was bootstrapped. There was no VC funding. I think it was a team of 6 people. So the developer behind it owned 100% of the company. At least I would like to believe some of the employees had some shares. That would be nice. And essentially, the product is a conversational vibe coding platform. So you speak to it, and essentially, it will build what you want it to build. And so obviously, Wix is a kind of like
coding?
website builder.
When you say vibe coding,
so vibe coding is essentially when you don't necessarily need to know how to code yourself, and the
like
AI
no-code,
does a lot of
low-code.
it. It's not necessarily low code in the sense where like low code is like drag and drop, where you're just putting blocks together. Vibe coding is when you're actually programming and you see the code, but essentially the AI is doing it for you, and then you say, okay, can you make the background red, or can you build this feature? And you should have some understanding of code. So it's really good for like people who are like have a basic understanding of coding, or are very rusty, or maybe you're a product manager and you have a rudimentary understanding of coding. So this is now the phenomenon of vibe coding. I do it a lot myself now, where like I can't be able to write the code myself. I just watch the code. I'm like, okay, that looks about right, and it works. So this is what Wix has bought.
Nice.
I think a lot of people are saying this is now proving out the kind of solo founder narrative. Obviously me and you have always believed that, but there hasn't been that many examples of like indie hackers. But the thing is, you got people like Peter Levels and other kind of indie hackers. They normally kind of stall out at like that $2 to $5 million range, which is amazing as an indie hacker. Like I wish, I'm saying that all the other indie hackers could hit that, range. But this is different. Now you're talking $100 million exit in 6 months.
Wow.
And I feel like people are going to take this shit more seriously. And also it demonstrates you don't need to go down that VC route. You don't need it. I mean, I've always said that for years, but this is now more proof in the pudding. And I think the other thing is we are going to get a one-person unicorn one day. I mean, Instagram was sold to Facebook. And there was that famous picture. There was that famous picture of Instagram, right? When they sold to Facebook and they were in the HQ of Facebook, and it was like 10 of them and they were sold for $1 billion. I think with AI now, the number of individuals needed to build a scalable tech product is going down even further. And eventually you will get to like, a 1-to-1 ratio. What that means for kind of people's employment opportunities and the economy in general, I don't know. It's not necessarily a good thing. It could be quite scary. But what does this all say to you? Like, what's your initial thoughts?
I'm really curious about like what allows such a lean team to build a product that's seen as so valuable, right? You said there's only like 6 of them that are exiting for 80 million. And if I understand it, this is like an AI, vibe built tool. What is it actually going to do? Like, what value is it adding to the Wix platform that they are willing to pay so much money for it? So
from my understanding, I haven't used Wix in a long time. It's a website builder for people who want to build like,
right?
Yeah. It's like Squarespace. If you're a small business owner, you want to, or WordPress, if you're a small business owner and you want to spit out a website quickly, if you're a small business, that's great. But I would imagine that Wix probably doesn't have an AI first platform or the ability to allow people to build apps AI first right now. And if they do, they probably are figuring it out, and they want to acquire the team that was able to build something that got to a large amount of users very quickly. So in terms of numbers, they've already got like 250,000 users. It's making around 200K in profit. So this is not something that's not proven. There's a lot of users on this platform, and you can just quickly integrate that into Wix. So now if you're a Wix user, you might say, okay, I've got this website, but maybe I want to build a backend. Maybe as a cleaner, I want to have a database of all my cleaners that work for me and my company. And now we can do that without having to get a dev team in India or a dev team out in the US or the UK that will rip me off. So this is what it is. It's no longer just HTML websites. It's now software that can be built at scale with ease. And it's all via conversation. I don't think it's even text. I think it's verbal. I need to try the platform myself, but I think that's what differentiates it. It's a conversational AI.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting times. Interesting times. Yeah, it does sound great. I want to try it.
I definitely think it's a combination of where we are in history, and the value that it gives to the platform. I think if you are building something with generative AI, like the returns feel so much more exponential than like other types of like web applications that existed before, and the opportunities that can come from this technology are just, yeah, so wide ranging and so huge. So I guess if you are someone who's been able to like build something that makes it easy for anyone to use AI, apply it to AI, apply it to their business, and then Wix, which literally lives off of supporting small and medium-sized business owners, sees that, I mean, why would they bother to start from scratch? They could just acquire this company, like you said, get it all done themselves. If I look at jobs boards, there are so many jobs at like startups or big companies, especially like corporates, that are like generative AI specialist, like our
Mm,
AI, chief AI officer. Like there are so many companies that someone on the board has read the Financial Times, has read that AI is coming for jobs, gone to the exec team and been like, what are we doing about generative AI? And then it's like, quick, make a role,
mm-hmm.
make a job for it. It's just like in 2020 when everyone was like, quick, we need a chief diversity officer now in 2025, it's like we need a chief AI officer now. And I think a lot of companies should be mindful of like what their actual like strategy is before they start spending a lot of money on this stuff, like actually trying to understand like how this fits into their vision, their strategy, how they're serving their customers and other stakeholders, so they're not just like dishing out a ton of money without understanding how they're going to measure the return on that. I mean, I think with this Wix acquisition seems to make sense and I get that, but you just see a lot of companies out there who are just scrambling like, what AI company can we acquire, or what AI innovation can we implement, or what AI expert can we hire to protect us from this and make sure we're adapting as quickly as our competitors. So yeah, there feels like a bit of an AI related panic as well.
That means opportunity. So one of my favorite business books that I read, it's called The Narrow Road, and it was written by this like billionaire owner of Maxim magazine. Anyways, he said that one of his
Throwback.
guiding principles was that whenever there's radical change happening in the economy, that's the time where you make all the money, because one, nobody knows what's going on. So for example, the Wix board might have just panicked and made this acquisition. So now someone like this guy's obviously enriched himself. But for example, if you're listening to this podcast, if you want to now become an AI consultant, you want to do 3, 4, 5 months of research and your dedication and understand these tools, you probably therefore know much more than most people in the economy. You can therefore sell your services. If you've got a little AI startup, now's the time to sell that to a bigger corporate because they're panicking. They don't know what they're doing. So when there's change, when there's blood in the water, when everyone's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? We don't know. People make rash decisions. And as an individual, you can, capitalize on that. You can get these job opportunities. You can sell your company, because large entities, they're very stodgy. They don't know what they're doing to a certain extent. And they follow trends. They're not original thinkers. So this is opportunity, I think, right? So as scary as AI is going to be, like in terms of job loss, actually, we've got to ride the wave. I said this one time on a TikTok of mine where I was like, don't be the person upset that a wave exists, just ride it. And I've been that person before who's upset that a wave existed. Oh no, why is it like this? And I don't like the fact the world's changing. Ride the wave and get your coin. And that's what I would advise any one of my friends. Last but not least, I always keep a few sociopathic business people in my Rolodex just so I understand where the world's going. So I knew a guy who I went to uni with. No, it's not you. You're one. Don't worry. So I got a friend of mine who runs a business. He runs a small business that's probably doing like 10, 12 million in revenue. It's like an agency. It's like a marketing agency type thing. And he was like, yeah, I've cut my team in half. I was like, what? Because he texted me and was like, oh, do you understand Replit, which is another kind of like vibe coding platform?
Yeah, I know Replit, yeah.
And then, but I was like, well, I'm in Japan. I'll get back to you. So I called him 3 weeks later and he was like, oh, don't worry, I've moved on. I'm using Replit. I'm using Lovable, these other tools. And I was like, okay, so what are you doing? He's like, yeah, I've cut my team in half. I was like, what? How, Sway? He's like, listen, like I've built tools that kind of help me manage my customers. I had a lot of customer success people. I had a lot of account managers. So in the real world, it's happening slowly but surely. Like it's not necessarily being reported. These job losses are not being reported just yet. But like a lot of sociopathic business owners are just looking to like slowly replace motherfuckers. Pardon my French. I might have to bleep that out. But yeah, anyway, something to be mindful of.
Very interesting.
So Abadesi,
very interesting.
Yeah, very, 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 very. Okay, there's another story that we talked about that I think is something that is going to be very influential going forward. So Aaron Sorkin, who was the director and the writer of The Social Network, he is now planning and writing a sequel to The Social Network 2. It's going to cover basically Facebook's influence on the youths, and how it's kind of mashed up their mental health. January 6th, kind of like just basically Facebook's nefarious impact on the world at large. But first, before we get to that, like I want to talk about kind of the impact that first movie had. And I know, or had, sorry. What was the impact of that first Social Network movie on you, Abadesi?
I mean, I was working in the city at the time. I was all suited up, booted up every day, going into the city, creating conferences for investment bankers, traveling to like Dubai and Sao Paulo. And I just thought, okay, I guess I work in the city now. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll work in an investment bank or like something. I don't know. Like I was just
Mm.
not thinking about startups by any way. And I'd studied economics. So I was like, oh, or maybe I'll go work for like a multilateral organization like the World Bank or something. And then I watched The Social Network and I was like, hang on a minute, this looks pretty good. I was like, I get to wear jeans to work. I don't have to wear a suit. I get to
Yeah.
own the company. I don't just have like a few, measly shares in it, and I can potentially change the world. How about you? What did you think of it?
I think by the time I watched it, I was already kind of set on my entrepreneurship journey, but it was definitely something that kind of reinforced the love of the game. I feel like it's kind of like Fight Club in the sense that most people watched that and took away the wrong message. Obviously, the message of the film is that you end up friendless. You have to be a bit of a sociopath to make it. Mark betrays his closest friend to get to the top. But a lot of us just watched that movie and were like, this is cool, dude. I want to be like
Was that
Mark.
the message of the film? Was that the intention?
I think it was
to
the message.
Put people off? I don't think so.
I don't think it was to put people off, but I don't think it was to be like, I want to be like Mark. I definitely don't think it was like, you should be like this person.
I definitely didn't leave the movie going, I want to be like Mark, but I want to be a better version.
Okay, there you go. But yeah, such an iconic movie, even down to the scene with I think the scene where Eduardo comes in and just smashes his laptop. I think it's one of my probably top 10 favorite scenes in all the movies where he just walks. He's like, Mark. He's wired in. And I was like, just smashing the laptop. I'm just geeking out about that scene. Love that scene. And then even the dialogue with Timberlake and Eduardo Saverin, great scene. And also, listen, I think that movie did the most to kind of educate people on like equity and dilution. Like I still hear people 100%. Now talk about like, that movie taught me that you can still be screwed quite easily if you don't have your legals handled right. Like it doesn't make a difference what you've invested in. You can be diluted and get your paperwork handled right. But I'm looking forward to the sequel. I think Sorkin obviously is an amazing writer. I'm not sure I think he's directing. I haven't really been a fan of the movies that he's directed.
I think they're trying to get Fincher on board. Fincher directed it.
Yeah, they have to get him back because that was the dream team.
But it's interesting because the first movie, for a lot of, and I'm talking like millennials, Gen Z, whatever, people in their like 20s and 30s, I guess even like 40s now, will remember that movie and remember how it sort of signaled some awareness / interest of startups as a career option. Because if you weren't already near technology, close to technology, in technology, or like technology as a vehicle for starting a business, that film 100% put it on your radar because you had people building websites, building communities, building platforms, getting users, raising funding. Like it would have just opened your eyes to this path where you're like, I could build a community. I could actually bring people together on an app that I built and make money off of that. That's easy. Well, not easy, but that's within my reach. That's feasible. And I just think it's really interesting how that was inspiring for people to come into the tech industry. And now thinking about what part 2 will do, focusing on these negative externalities or even like the intentional negative outcomes on mental health, underage users, exposure to highly violent images, highly sexualized images, the obsession with looks. Now all of these like apps as well that young high schoolers and school kids are using to like rate how hot they are, how attractive they are. And I don't know, I think with the part 2, people are going to actually be really angry at the tech industry. I think people are going to walk away and kind of think, look at all of these people with all of this power and responsibility and money who don't pay taxes properly, who don't safeguard users properly, who are exploiting the way our brains work to make their products intentionally addictive. Like, I just think people are going to like leave that film and buy a dumb phone and unplug their routers when they get home. And I don't know, maybe. I just think it's so interesting how that shift has happened so quickly. Like there was a time where people would idealize Meta and Facebook. And I remember when the tide started turning, especially when all the Cambridge Analytica news started coming up, blah, blah, blah. I did this Twitter poll and I was like, would you rather work for a tobacco company or Meta? And tobacco company won the poll. And
people are lying. You liars. Why you gotta lie like that? If I give you a little 150k Meta package with some stock, people are going there, man. Like some people don't even realize that, like, Instagram and WhatsApp are part of Facebook as well. So they're gonna be like, oh, no, I'm working at Instagram. It's like, no, you're working for Zuckerberg. Either way. So what I want to ask you though is like fan casting. Okay. So obviously Jesse Eisenberg is speculated to return, but it's not been confirmed. He has to return. There's no way. Give him the money. He is Mark Zuckerberg. I'm sorry.
He's
give him the
money.
The
gym though. Gotta hit the gym, bruh.
No, but I think this movie is set before then. This movie is set during the kind of January 6th events. So this is going to be before
Okay,
Zuckerberg
nice.
rehabilitated his new image, right? And I think the Senate
I gotta
hearing
hope
where
T-Pain's in
Zuckerberg,
it.
the January 6th, the hearings that happened where they kind of, when he looked a bit very robotic and he was drinking the water and he just looked like Data from Star Trek. That's
When
going to
does
be,
he
I think,
not look robotic? That's not a helpful
no,
cue.
but what I'm saying is in like he kind of tried to rehabilitate his image a little bit and feel a bit more human. Like, and I feel like the way the first movie was set around those court cases and the kind of legal back and forth between Saverin and the Winklevoss, I feel like they're gonna have to use the Senate hearing where he got questioned about his impact on what he was doing. I think that has to be kind of center stage. But I wanted to ask you, who do you cast as Sheryl Sandberg? Fan cast. Who do you want Sheryl Sandberg to be played by?
That's a great question. She is a really interesting person because she also kind of gives a bit of that like unreadable robotic. I mean, it's probably their media training because of like, any eyebrow raise could send the share price plummeting or something. What about who's the actress who plays Yasmin in Industry, and she played Amy Winehouse in the biopic?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. She's too young though. Too young. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah. The actress is called, I forgot her name.
Marissa Abella. Okay, so what age range are we talking here? Would she be someone in her 40s?
Late 30s, 40s. But yeah, we'll leave that to the audience. I don't know. Okay, I'm getting a Sandra Bullock vibe, but Sandra Bullock probably too up there in age right now. Maybe even a Scarlett Johansson. I don't know. Maybe Scarlett could pull it off. Give her a dark wig. You know what I'm saying?
Give her a wig. She's in everything these days.
Yeah. But I think her role will be key because she definitely was, not to remove the blame on Zuck. She obviously was part of it. She's not an enabler, but I would say that she definitely gave him cover. She definitely was the kind of the PR person who gave Meta. She was the deflector in chief. Lean in. It was very much empowering women, and it was good stuff. But at the same time, it was definitely stuff that helped soften the image of that company. I want to see a scene.
Choice. Go on.
And I want to see a scene where, because basically Eduardo Saverin, who's the co-founder, played by Andrew Garfield in the first movie, he sells his shares in Facebook, and he sells his shares in Facebook and essentially moves to Singapore, gives up his US citizenship to pay no taxes, basically, right? I just want to see a scene with Andrew Garfield in Singapore just sipping Mai Tai, just like, not involved. Like, I just want to see that one scene. That's it. Like, they'll be like, listen, you lot are stressing out. I've got my billions. I'm good. Basically, the revenge of Eduardo. Yeah, vibing, man. Oh yeah, let's leave it to the audience. Who do you want to see cast in that movie? And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, it comes out real soon. People ask me all the time, I'm not in tech, how do I get started? If you've ever felt stuck at work thinking, I know I'm capable of more, Triple 10 is for you. It's a career bootcamp that helps you pivot into tech. No experience needed. Whether you're into data analytics, software engineering, or QA, they give you the structure, mentorship, and job support to go from zero to hired in under a year. And get this, if you don't land a job within 10 months of graduating, you get your money back. We've even got a quiz made just for our listeners to see if tech is your next move. Take it now at triple10.com/techish and start exploring your future in tech with Triple 10. So you put into the show notes, there's drama between Microsoft and OpenAI. Drama in the AI world. What's going down?
I'm going to try and break this down. So in 2019, Microsoft gave OpenAI $1 billion.
Oh, must be nice.
I know, to support the development of AI, but it also had to be on Microsoft's Azure cloud platform. So they also are giving them like preferential rates, right? Fast forward to 2025, and OpenAI is trying to get ready to go public, list on the stock exchange. And in order to do that, it needs to transition into a public benefit corporation. So they need Microsoft to approve this transition. And Microsoft are not agreeing to the terms. So I think OpenAI is basically reflecting on the deal that it made and kind of going, I'm not really sure we're happy with this. So Microsoft does still hold 49% of OpenAI's for-profit subsidiary, which is like huge. I mean, wow. And it doesn't want to have these changes, which are going to reduce its influence, reduce its revenue share. So for example, OpenAI wants to lower like the revenue sharing rate and secure more independence. Microsoft gets 20% of all revenue right now, and that converts into like the benefits and stuff like that. Another really saucy development is that, of course, when Microsoft cut this deal, they were like, you're going to use our cloud services, but actually OpenAI has been reducing its dependence on Microsoft. It's actually using Google Cloud more and more.
Yikes.
It's even signed deals with Microsoft competitors like Apple and Salesforce. And on the other side, Microsoft's playing the same game. So it's like, okay, you're not the only AI model that we're exploring and we're using. It's been integrating Grok, for example, into Azure. So there's friction on both
Wow.
sides. And OpenAI might potentially even be considering an antitrust lawsuit against Microsoft. But you're talking about lawyering up in the startup world. This could be a
For
very, very
real.
juicy fight. What do you think? And also, if
I
you had
think
built a company, would you give 49% away?
I am very skeptical of any deal between companies where the relationship is not super clear cut. I think you either go in and you acquire 100%, so there's clarity, just like in any personal relationship. It's like, what are we? You've obviously, so Microsoft owns like 49% of the for-profit entity, but does that mean that it's a Microsoft subsidiary? It's like, who is in
Mm,
charge here? And that's why I think
mm,
this was always not going to work well, because both companies
mm.
have different incentive structures completely, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought this was bound to happen. One thing that is super interesting here is that part of the contract also says that there's a clause where if OpenAI reaches AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is this amorphous idea that eventually the AI will become sentient and basically will outperform humans at every single economic task, basically. Essentially, Microsoft exclusive access will be done. That's the clause, which is a very surreal clause. Microsoft wants that clause removed to ensure their long-term access to these models or exclusivity to these models. It's like, but how do you determine AGI? Like,
What?
how it's
Yeah.
such a vague clause. The actual clause says
Mm,
highly autonomous system that outperforms humans at most economically valuable work is achieved. Number one, is that AGI? I don't think that's AGI. To me, AGI basically
mm.
means the thing is Terminator, not Terminator, but it's thinking for itself. It does what it wants on its own terms, right?
Yeah.
So this whole thing was a mess. I think there was a scramble to kind of, get that kind of market share and get leadership in this space. And a contract was signed that I think doesn't look like it makes much sense. I
Mm.
am not somebody who believes that you should be, for want of a better crude phrase, half pregnant. I think you either buy the whole thing
Is
or
that a
you just have
phrase?
a
You just
small.
made that up. You just made that
No,
up.
no,
Half
I didn't make it
pregnant.
up. I mean, listen, it's a phrase that determines that, like, that shows that, like, you can't be it. You can't be halfway. You're either something or you're not. It's like, so that's
Mm.
my perspective in business anyway. And the other thing is,
Mm.
I just find OpenAI so shady. This whole, like, now we're gonna go to for profit. Originally, we started off as like a non-profit. Originally, it was about the betterment of humanity. I think Elon has a point. Elon said, "I invested money into OpenAI for the sole reason of we needed an open source version to compete against big tech." Now it's just become big tech because of the fact that
Mm.
the money on the table is so lucrative. So yeah, I think this thing was bound to happen, and I think this is going to be in the courts for a very, very long time because both companies just have a different incentive structure. Microsoft wants to protect its position against Google, against all the other kind of big tech
Mm.
players. OpenAI wants to scale up as much as possible, and that may mean
Yeah,
working
yeah,
with
yeah.
Google, working with other partners, working with Apple. They signed an agreement with Apple, and I was convinced, okay, here we go. Siri's about to get turbocharged, isn't it? My biggest pet peeve in tech is Siri, how crap Siri
You
is, isn't it?
hate
I was
it. Yeah.
excited. But then I was like, how is Microsoft letting this slide? Like, how is Microsoft okay with
Mm.
this? Like, so anyways, hot
Well,
mess.
because they're making
Hot,
20% of the deal. It's what I find
but
really
even still,
interesting
it's
about it.
but it's,
Yeah.
but it's like you can make 20% on revenue, but what if it weakens your own company's fundamental position as a competitive company? But anyways, go on, carry on. Sorry, apologies.
Yeah. Does Microsoft have like a personal AI assistant? Like I know Amazon has Alexa and
That's a
like
good
is there
question, actually. I don't think.
Clippy AI? Like, hey
That's
Clippy.
a great. That should be a great name for it. I don't think they do have their own tool. I know they have Copilot, which is a programming text editor, and it's an AI companion. But I don't think they have their own model. I think they've been
Because I
relying
can't think of
on.
like a Microsoft
Oh, they do.
device.
Azure AI. It's called Azure. Yeah, they've got one. They have
And
one, but it's
what do
not.
you
It's not.
access
It's
it
not.
on?
I think it's when you're trying to build apps, basically. I think it's an
Because
API, so that for example, if
okay.
I wanted to build an AI tool, like an AI, I don't know, language translator, I could use Azure
Mm.
AI, but it's not, they don't have a chat GPT where any user can just go in and
I was
have a
gonna say
text conversation with
there's
it.
nothing because Azure is also it's like a cloud thing. It's not like I can go, hey Azure, what's
But so
the
let me
weather?
explain one thing I think that most people are confused on. ChatGPT is one product. The actual business is what is the model. So ChatGPT is a layer on top of the model, which is basically how most consumers interact with these models. But you can also interact with these models just using an API and building out your own
Yeah.
apps, whatever, using the thing. So the fact they don't have a layer like a ChatGPT doesn't mean that they don't necessarily have a model per se. It's just they don't want to make it a consumer-facing model, which is
The reason
what
I brought this
ChatGPT
up
is.
is because you were saying, why don't they see Siri as part of their competition? But Siri is like a voice assistant integrated into iPhone, right? So I was just saying, what is their like for like version of that at Microsoft?
Right. No. No, there isn't. No,
Okay.
there isn't.
But yeah, I think it's interesting that a deal of such magnitude, $1 billion, had such, let's face it, ambiguity within it. Like that description of AGI, artificial generative intelligence, is like like a philosophy grad drafted it, like not some of the most whatever best contract lawyers in the world, which Microsoft would have enabled. I don't know, it just feels really weird. And then it makes me think, well, obviously that meant that for both sides there was benefit to be gained from some ambiguity, right? Like that was like very intentional. Like you're not going in blind to a deal of that size. You're like, okay, cool, we're signing this contract. So there's obviously some part of you that's like, this ambiguity could be beneficial for us because it could work either way, right? It could work either way in terms of like breaking the deal, redefining the deal, or whatever. I think, whether we call them shady or what, I just think it's like the natural cycle of capitalism, where like a deal that looks good at the time because it's the best deal you have, a few years down the line when you've grown, you've like reached scale, you see new opportunities on the horizon, you get a bit big for your britches, and suddenly you're like, okay, actually, I'm, whether you want to call it greed, whether you want to call it ambition, it's the same thing. You suddenly go, this isn't working out for us. This is like why pop groups break up. This is why like Beyonce had to leave Destiny's Child. Like, these things just happen. Like what you don't know until you know it. And then you're like, I'm destined for more, or I could do better. And I just feel like OpenAI is on that journey now with Microsoft, where they're just like, what was once an opportunity has now become a hindrance. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I think the other fascinating stuff in the AI space, and you made a note of this, is the fact that according to Sam Altman, boss of OpenAI, his team members are getting offers from Meta north of $100 million for signing bonus. So these are rank and file employees. These are not, I mean, I'm sure these are execs, but these aren't necessarily owners of the business. I think I never want to hear anyone ever say that you have to leave a 9 to 5 to get rich. These are employees who have, a very niche skill set. Obviously, they're very talented and they've trained within within a certain subject. Most of them are probably PhDs. But listen, that's an insane amount of money for an individual to receive just to join employment at another company. And it shows the stakes involved. You're not giving a handful of individuals $100 million each if you don't believe they're not going to contribute to trillions of dollars of economic value.
You want the IP that comes in their brains.
No, that's what I'm saying. But you don't give that to them unless you think they're going to contribute trillions of dollars to your market cap. So that's what's on the line here. Facebook is fascinating. Honestly, Facebook's and AI and Meta. Sorry, I don't understand
What's their play?
Obsession with it. What is their play? Because nobody wants to go on WhatsApp and chat to an AI model. I get maybe using AI to make the ads more efficient. Like, you want to have an AI that when I say I want to do this advert on your platform, it automatically gives me to the relevant people straight away because of its, unreal prowess technologically. But in terms of like this sort of, what they've been experimenting with trying to like give WhatsApp models, bots that I can chat to. I don't get it, honestly. Like,
Zuck's new story, this came out like a month ago and it was covered on The Guardian. And I think Bridget Todd did it on like No Girls on the Internet. He believes that he can solve loneliness.
Jesus.
So that is what Meta wants to do. The reaction. But he wants to use AI to make friends so that you are never lonely. Tell me this, riddle me this. Why do we need to commoditize something that is innate and natural to humanity? Why do I need a billionaire who's already like broken democracy to now also tell me how to not be lonely and be friends? Like, if people don't see how dystopian and dark that is, we're messed up. Or we're more messed up than I thought we were. Like, why do you need to make me a friend? Why do you need to use AI to make me a friend?
It's worse than that because he is the cause of so much of the existing loneliness that exists. People,
so
15 people are much more lonely than they were 20, 15, 25 years ago. And a big part of that is social networking.
I created a disease.
How are you?
Yeah, exactly. And now I'm going to feed you the drug. And then the drug is actually just a disguised new disease. Don't buy it. Run away.
Do you remember that scene in The Wolf of Wall Street where he's like, sell me this pen? And the guy's like, okay, but can you sign your name? He's like, okay, but I don't have a pen. $100 for the pen. It's like, you created the demand. And now you're trying to fulfill the demand. It's like, you are the cause, brother. Like, what are you doing? Yeah, I think it's a dark, dark world. And we're going to see people interact more with these sort of artificial entities as friends, as content creators, as lovers. You know, there's another story that we were going to talk about, how this man fell in love with his AI. One thing I want to talk about with these models. Go on. Yeah, sure. No, go for it.
Sorry, I just have to just ask one question. What do you think Mark Zuckerberg's legacy will be? God forbid he dies early. The guy's 41 years old. He's young. He has a family. You know, pray he lives a long, healthy life. But imagine that he didn't. What do you think his legacy will be? And like, this kind of makes sense for the social network too, as well. Like, is he someone who's gonna be fondly remembered, or is he a villain or a hero?
I think it depends on what he decides to do in the remaining 30, 40 years of his life, because that's that famous story of the Nobel Peace Prize invented by Nobel, the guy called Nobel, and he was essentially a dynamite and arms manufacturer, and decided that he didn't like what his obituary was going to be. I think the legendary story is that they thought that he died and he read his obituary prematurely and was like, oh, this is not my legacy, and he invented the Peace Prize. So if Mark Zuckerberg spends the next 20, 30 years of his life doing humanitarian work, running for president, doing politics, helping people, he could completely whitewash this whole portion of his life. He's still so young that it's very hard to call it. But if he died today, yeah, I think he would be somebody who revolutionized human interaction and communication, and not necessarily for the better. And he turned a blind eye to things that were harmful to humanity and young people, but was great for his business. So, but also at the same time, there's a perspective that he's also one of the, greatest business executors in the last 50 years. He's never really innovated, but he's been fantastic at taking existing ideas and executing it in a way that not many people can keep up with him. So yeah, he's a complicated figure. I'm not going to say all negative, but I will say there's a big part of it that is negative. Also, to a certain extent, if he didn't do it, somebody else would have. And that's maybe not a good moral defense, but like, I don't think he... No, I'm going to be honest. He didn't invent social networking, Friendster, MySpace. No. These things all existed, but and the mobile device was coming, smartphones were coming, so it probably would have existed anywhere. I also think TikTok and that sort of short form content has probably also now compounded his work and made things probably a bit worse in terms of people's attention spans and the type of content that people consume. So maybe he's not necessarily the primary villain anymore. But yeah, let's see. And also, but if they want to offer me 100 million to join, I will contemplate. That's what I'm going to say. Yo, everyone, that's been this week's Techish. Thank you again for listening. We'll catch you next week at TechishPod on Instagram. Watch us on YouTube. Watch us on Spotify. And subscribe to our Patreon. Peace, everyone.
Bye.
So let's do a Patreon story now. I want to talk about, does the fact that people who have not had a real job in their life, like retail or cleaning job, has that led to a fundamental lack of empathy amongst our elites in society? I saw a hilarious Instagram video where this guy was saying that fascism starts from the standing desk. And I want to play that clip for you now.
To watch the full episode, subscribe at patreon.com/techish. You'll get access to all full-length episodes, no adverts, the chance to submit your questions into the show, and early bird discounted tickets to our live shows. Subscribe for as little as $5 a month.